of all, thank you for the organizers, for the invitation, for the collaborators that were Marcela Pifarete, Lucía Osorio, and Valentina Badugón, to the volunteers, which were the person that participate in the study, and the system of national research and PEDECIBA, because they gave me the funds for the research. Second, to focus the problem, and usually perception deals with the characteristic features of concrete categorical entities, for example, a face or an object or whatever. Here we try to focus, to defocus from the content and try to focus to the formality of the problem, and say, well, when I construct a category formed by several elements and want to join them logically, somehow, I use connectors. And then the idea is, well, how the brain is able to construct new concepts out of all concepts plus connectors. And to focus in that from the perceptual point of view, we try to go the most simple case, that is, just use an abstract idea, which is the idea of color, and then try to use or to understand how the connectors can be computed in the brain. So in the formal logic case, one can adopt a Boolean framework. The Boolean framework means that I can say, well, something can be constructed because this and this other, or using another kind of connector like or not. And with these three connectors, actually with only two connectors in the Boolean framework, one can construct any concept. So you can say, well, a dog is something with four legs, and make wow and whatever, and you add ideas, and then finally you get a dog. So, but the important, interesting thing that in the end of the 19th century, it was shown that a single operator is enough. In the Sheffer case or Peirce case, were two lines of research that converge on the same idea, that a single connector can construct all connectors. The case, for example, if you have this connector, which is Sheffer connector, which is not and. So if you have the idea of not and, then you can say, well, not A is a Sheffer connector, not a Sheffer connector A. In the same way, not A is simpler than A, because you need to make not a Sheffer connector, not A to get A. So, and then this is a way of thinking that a machine could work like that, but will be completely different than a machine that works with a Boolean logic. So the problem is, what is the logic that uses the brain? So the first thing is, if we use any of these frameworks to think, or we use another one. And then about 2005, a psychologist called Feldman published a paper in Nature saying that the difficulty of a concept learning can be measured as a linear function of the Boolean minimum description length. So if you have apparently under this hypothesis, the Boolean rules are heavily represented in the human brain. And the problem is, well, now going to the simpler stage, because one complex state could be language, but a simpler stage that appears even earlier in evolution and also earlier in development is perception. So, and then the idea is, if you have to make a perceptual decision, then do you use Boolean logic, some sort of close logic to Boolean, and that is what we wanted to test. Then we made two approaches. One was psychophysics, and the second was EEG. And then the paradigm was very simple. We have a wide and neutral stimulus, which is a pixelated circle on a black screen. Then appears a stimulus cycle during 1 second, and then when the stimulus cycle stops, the next circle appears again. So the point is, one has to verify a logic proposition, a relatively simple, using colors that are placed in this in the intermediate circle. Then the first thing that we try is just to use positive proposition. That means the first one. Do you see the pointer? Hello?
Yes, yes, it is.
Okay. The easier thing is, well, just put a color and you ask the person if there is a blue sector. Of course, this you have only one variable, which is one color, and then you have the shortest reaction time. Then if you ask for the easiest, the second two connectors, blue or yellow, or blue and yellow. So I mean, in this case, you need to have two connectors. In this, you have one or the other, but you can have both because this OR is inclusive OR. Then it's a little, you have two concepts and one connector that is a Boolean connector. Then if you combine this and OR, then you can have longer combinations, and then you have an almost verification of Feldman hypothesis. The latency of the response goes linear with the number of variables or the concept that you need to evaluate. And then the number of errors goes on the same type of line. So that means efficiency and accuracy depend on the minimum number of color values across the whole expression that has to be evaluated. Then visual search experiments are experiments that you have put many elements and then you have to search for one. Of course, if you put many elements in the screen, you need to take more time to evaluate if a given type of element is there. But just already in visual search experiment, you can see that the time, if you look for an element that is present in the image, or look for an element that is not present in the image, you see that these timings are double than these ones. So this gives us a hint that negation could have given a more difficulty than and or connectors. And then, because of that, we were going to evaluate negation. But in this case, we use brief, very brief spots. So a spot with a color, in this case blue, in this case red, in this case green, and then a spot, and as the spot could be blue, red, or green, or any other color. And then the question was, well, tell me if there is blue or there is no blue. And always not blue, not red, not green, give us more time. That means, well, in the three Boolean connectors, negation is more difficult. That was something that was already known in language. If you have a negative sentence, it's more difficult to understand. People that made multiple choice examination knows that, but was not so clear in perception. But in this case, since we use a very brief stimulus and a very sharp stimulus in the center of the screen, only that, not the other protocol, it was just a spot in the center of the screen. There was no place for visual search, because was this or was not this. Then the second thing that we were to test, it was to compare whether a simple asking was not the only rule, but the presence of negation was translated to more complex ideas. So if I say blue or yellow is shorter, the reaction time, than blue, that the negation, o sea, not blue or not yellow, not blue or yellow, that means is the parenthesis matters here. And then this is longer. And the same happen with blue and yellow and not blue and yellow. So, and the difference in latency in these cases was exactly the same. So negation was adding to the other proposition the same amount as they add to evaluating a single spot. Then we put the negation, another way of negating. The other way of negating is commonly used in decision-making experiments, in visual decision-making experiments, because usually people train a monkey to look for this or to look for this. So, and then you have to choose between two known targets. That means this is a kind of exclusive OR. And then when we added exclusive OR, which is here, or the bijection, which is the negation of the exclusive OR, which is here, both are more or less in the same point. And this coincides with the 4 items. And what means this? This suggests that although this point is in the same four items, it shouldn't be, because you have 4 items because you have A and not B, or B and not A. In the case of of a color will be blue and not yellow, or yellow and not blue, that is good, or 4, but you have the not included. That means that if the not were being used in this proposition, the number instead of 4 should be 6, but this falls here. So somehow this gives the idea to us that this exclusive OR is another kind of mental operator that is used for thinking. In addition, the blue or X or yellow, I mean the alternative, blue and not yellow, or blue, yellow and not blue, is something that is a type of operator which is not completely logical in our thinking. Suppose that I say, I will go to the movies, either go to the movies, to the beach, or to the football game. For us, it's completely logic to choose between these 3 options, but you cannot be in the 3 places at the same time. However, you compute the logical value of A XOR B XOR C, it comes true that you can be in the 3 places at the same time, which is a wrong thing. So that means the XOR, that means the exclusive OR, is not itself a single operator, but the real operator is another one. Is only one of these options is the valid one, which is, in the case of 2, okay, comes to be XOR. Anyway, that is a digression, but it will matter later. So we have another problem in our experiment, that we needed to rule out that the type of stimulus, the color stimulus, was not the one that give us the difference in reaction time. Then what we did, well, if I have XOR, if I have XOR proposition, I have, if I put blue is true here, blue is not true here, yellow is true here, yellow is not true here in this axis, and this will be both are true, then XOR will be, the exclusive OR will be falling here, which is blue is correct, not blue is not correct, not yellow is not blue and not yellow, this is yellow and not blue. And in this case, when you have the inclusive, you have the blue and not yellow, the yellow and not blue, and the blue and yellow as a valid option. And if you have here blue only, you have blue alone, or blue and yellow. So that means in the 3 cases, you have different stimulus, but the stimulus here, and here is the same, is blue and not yellow. So what we try is to see if I look for the blue and not yellow stimuli in the 3 experiments, when I ask, give me the, look for blue and or yellow, or blue for blue and not yellow, or yellow and not blue, the reaction time when I presented this single stimulus increases with the difference in proposition. What does it mean? It means that the stimulus is not the relevant element, but what is the relevant element is the real proposition. So, and then we tested this for other propositions, and then we always had the same point. What matters is not the stimulus, but is the combination of connectors. And if you go to the task latency in general and the stimulus latency, all that means task general is any stimulus that fits the latency is here, and this is only one type of stimulus that is always the same, then you have a line. So that is completely determined by the, oops, I went to the last, but I wanted to go to the, sorry. So what you get is a completely determinist of the timing because of the task latency, and not the stimulus latency had the same value that any other combination of stimulus that fits the latency. So then we can conclude that the efficiency, accuracy depend on the structure of the proposition. And then negative values are affecting all others. This we did with different type of stimulus, large or small, even brief, to avoid visual search, and then we get always the same result. The problem of XOR, I already mentioned that Boolean complexity is 4 in the case that both everybody is positive, but in our case, we will be 6 because the negation is here. Then is our conclusion, or first conclusion, is that with Feldman hypothesis is more or less okay, but negation is a particular case. Then I will just jump this. I already talked about this XOR, and then we fit our data with a simple model. That is the number of positive items times 75, which is a kind of a mean unit of timing for a decision, plus negative items, which takes double, plus XOR, because we think that XOR, or the best operator, could be one of all these options is positive, which is the general definition, is this takes 150. So if you put all these numbers, you get the decision time any combination of propositions, of connectors and concepts that you use. So it depends on number of items, but depends on different type of items. And these are our experimental results in a long group of stimulus subjects. I think that each point are many subjects. The type of symbols depends, because we couldn't make all points in the same groups of subjects, so we use different group of subjects to explore the whole set of proposition that we study. So then the second approach was, well, if we have 3 ways or 3 main operators, one that is affirming and Another operator that is important, which is negation, and another operation that is important is one of all the options is the only valid. We went to try to evaluate using EEG what are the difference in the EEG in this case. The XOR problem, we still didn't complete the study, but we have solid data on the case of comparing affirming versus negation, and we can say that the two patterns that we observed are different. The protocol was very similar. Then we started with a pixelated circle with many colors. Then we put our stimulus, and then with a given target, and then the subject had to wait until the time that has a question mark in order to answer. And the reason for the question mark late is to do not interfere with the motor response with the cognitive response. So first comes the cognitive response, and later delay appears the motor response that indicates what the subject was answering. Then in this, if you make the experiment that we show at the beginning, you can ask the person, well, tell me if this has a blue sector, or if it has a not have a blue sector. But in these two cases has two alternatives, which is the timing that the subject does not answer because it's a go, no go task. That is the tacit affirming, which is the counterpart of explicitly denying, and tacitly denying, which is the counterpart of explicit affirming. So we have four set of recordings that we can average to get what is the brain activity occurring after during this task. We compare these responses with a response that is in blue here, which is just we did before the experiment, and just say the person just look at the screen and don't do anything else. Don't think in whatever you want, and then just look at the screen, so the same stimuli. This means that the difference is not depending on the stimulus, but is depending on the task that the person was doing. To go on the, sorry, to analyze the data, here we show in a 1220 disposition the two set of traces, the control and the explicit affirming trace. And then what we did the same thing in all the cases. And then what we needed is to have a statistical rule to show whether in which electrodes and which times were the difference. And then we follow a procedure described by Cohen, I guess, that was to consider the whole recording as a single image. So in each part of the image, you will have one electrode, but it and many times. So you have a matrix which in one dimension you have the electrons, and the other you have the timers. So, and then we compare the images, taking from many persons in two conditions. So, and then we made a t-test between both images, and then we get a t-value for each pixel, and then here each pixel will be a small line of this width, and then that is represented. This is the t-value represented for each color. And then the second thing that we do is just to make a permutation analysis that was taking one condition and permuting with the other condition randomly many times. About I think that we made about 1,034 times permutations. Then, once we get, this is the same signal, and then what we did was to look whether the lines of permutations went below a critical level, and then we find which pixels comes out of the probable pixels in the image. Then, now we transformed this matrix into this matrix. The white were the not significant, the red were significant to one side, the blue were significant to the other side. And then we found that we have an early negative or whatever on one side difference, and a late difference on the other side. This is for explicitly affirming. And then this obviously corresponds to this peak and this peak in the difference of the real data. But the difference in the real data is not considered a good statistical approach. Then this was compared in the go with blue with the go with no blue. And the point here is that the blue line here and the blue line here is in the same place. So these and these are almost the same, but these red spots are more, sorry, these red spots are a little earlier than the line, and these red spots are later than the line. So you can see here the real data in gray of many persons, and then the average in red, and you can see that this peak and this peak are, if you superimpose, are more or less in the same place, but this peak is earlier, for example, than this peak, and also is larger. And this is the main result. Also, you can do with the tacit affirming, and you get a similar view, but with no so importance in terms of statistics. So going to a bipolar approach, then if these blue and orange lines are now these dotted lines, and you can see that this peak is before the dotted line, but the peak is on the right of the dotted line. So that means, and statistically, timing is almost the same. These are statistics of the people, and then if you go to the timing of the positive, this in the tacit and also in the explicit affirming is earlier than in the tacit, than the in the explicit and the tacit negation. So that means there is a delay of the second peak. So in the Loretta reconstruction of the EEG, we found that the images were similar for the affirming, explicitly affirming, and explicitly denying, with a little more intensity in explicitly affirming, but were really similar. However, when you go to the positive, the similarity occurs, if you look at this timing, at 465 and denying, but 387 in affirming. That means the activation of the zones that are active at that time are similar. And these zones are, the inner part of the temporal lobe, mostly at the left side, and you can see it here, the basal, which is obviously a place for recognition, and also the basal frontal lobe, which you can see here and also here. Now, we try to show this in a movie in which we try to represent frame by frame the progress of the process. Then now it's going to start, and then at the beginning, up to here, the process follows more or less the same course. You can see this image, and this image. The bottom one is the control. The upper is the affirming, and the lower is the denying. And then all the pictures are more or less similar. But if the time goes on, when you reach about here, you start to see differences. So now the signal went back to the cortex, and then goes back to this place, which is called the cuneus. And at this point, more or less, I stopped the movie here to show that at this point will be a change in the activation course. So you can see the next one, and then here you see that the cuneus is being activated more heavily. This is more broad, and this, as you will see, is going to go back and stay in the occipital or parieto-occipital region, while this will progress to the rostral regions of the brain. Now you can see it here and here, the activation of the cuneus, but here you don't have the cuneus, but have just the parietal region. This is the control, and then these two decisions went into a path. But here you can see that one just jumped through here to here, which is the temporal lobe, but the other stays here, which affirming goes more rapidly to the temporal lobe, but denying still stays in the precuneus. So time later, both are here, but this signal already reached the basal frontal lobe, but this still not. And then the frontal lobe is active here, and this is not yet. Decision has not been done, and then as time goes by, now both frontal region are, this frontal region is activated. As you see here, the control was not different. So what means, what this points is that there is a crucial role, crucial role of a region that is in precuneus that works as kind of a hub that directs the signal to two places. One is the temporal path, and the other is the frontal region. In the case of the 9, this is very evident, but this progress to here is not. And then at 385 affirming decisions, you get an activation of the frontal lobe, while at 387, denying decision, you still have no full activation. But you have a full activation of both as 465 time. In addition, we have here another point that if you look at the frontal region, the tacit decisions are very similar, while in the temporal region, the tacit decisions have a delay. And this somehow put whether there is a frontal difference in when you expect to push the button, you have an expectation for the question mark that when you don't expect to push the button, and this is reflected in this late activity at the frontal region. So what we did was just to make another experiment in 8 people, and then we am recording directly from the frontal region, and then we found that this difference really occurs, and then it coincides more or less with the Loretta picture. But the other thing is this coincides also with the timing of the motor decision. So in conclusion, minimum description length is a good measurement of the complexity of brain algorithm from logic processing. Second, negation is an additional factor that has to be taken into account. Third, XOR is a peculiar operator that has to be taken into account separately. It's not a negation. It's another operator which in reality is not this or this, but is one of these options is valid. Because when you make an option with more options, the XOR comes into wrong conclusions for a physical world. Third, the main effect of the 9 is a latency shift of a P300-like potential. 5, perceptual negation occurs early in the posterior temporal regions. Then the idea was here that occurs early in the posterior temporal regions, and then before the visual the signal tree and the cognitive string. The last slide, what I wanted to say is some philosophical idea that is while XOR, that means the option between two positive options is to choose, not allows to generate expectations of the unknown. Because node is pointing to everything that is not the target, which you can know or not. Without the 9, there will be no knowledge, because science progress the 9. Second, while the extended XOR, that means one and only one of these options is valid, allows to choose between the elements of a finite set, was a group of well-defined elements, not open the door to infinites and also to infinitesimals. This is the basis of real number, continuous functions, and calculus. So, I mean that not is a very interesting operation that should be studied better, because it maybe is the logic operation that brings us to what we know as humans. So, and that's it. That is my thank you for everybody, and thank you for the invitation, and that's all.
Okay. Thank you, Angel. And so now, please, if you have questions, comments. No question, no comments. Maybe we are all very tired.
Yeah.
I would like if you can comment a little bit more on the last slide, in which you say something about what makes us humans.
This is the point. If you are able to negate instead of to choose between two options, this means that opens you a new field, which is the field of the unknown, because you're not choosing between two options, but you are choosing between this and then something that you don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that means open the door to knowledge. That's why science works denying, because you deny the present truth,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't know what will be the real truth. That was one of the ideas. Mm-hmm. The second idea is if you are able to deny, instead of opting from one or other individual thing, you can conceive a continuous. That is the only way of conceiving a continuous, is to negating the discreteness of the word, and that's what gave at some point the idea of infinitesimal calculus. Mm-hmm. And then that's what opened a lot of doors in humanity. Now we also go to discreteness by another reason, but anyway, is a way of opening different ways of thinking that usually the traditional algorithmic computer use, because at the end you have a serial Turing machine that goes step by step in discrete way, and it's not a way of negating, is not a way of finding the complementary set. Is a way of finding something that is not this, and this is opening the door to unknown.